Hey folks, if you love true stories about extraordinary life experiences, we think you'll love the Risk podcast.
Risk is the show where people tell true stories that they never thought they'd dare to share.
Stories too uncensored for public radio.
On Risk, nothing's too intimate or too strange.
Like the one about the guy who gets kidnapped by a drug cartel.
Or the girl who discovered she was living with a cannibal.
Oof. Or the woman who learned the person she was sharing kinky fantasies with online was her dear old dad.
Yuck. You'll hear real people sharing about life experiences so funny,
so scary,
so mystifying,
you won't believe your ears.
Find it all at risk-show.com or just search on your podcast app for Risk. That's RISK exclamation point or risk-show.com.
And now for our regularly scheduled fucking awesome episode of our own.
Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Tracy Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast. Ow!
What's up? What is up? I'm Elia Einhorn. Welcome to the show. Today I'm joined by
Annie Fell, Associate Editor.
And we have a very cool conversation for you today. John Grant in conversation with Jake Shears of Scissor Sisters. Annie, when I heard that John and Jake were huge fans of each other's music and wanted to come on the show to talk, I thought, fuck yes.
Hell yeah, as good a reason as any for them to come on.
John Grant has been releasing records for about 25 years. First as frontman for the Bella Union Records band The Czars, and then after their dissolution, solo. In 2018, he released what became one of my favorite records of the year, Love is Magic. As with all of his records, Grant does not shy away from sharing in his songs and in his interviews what he's thinking about, what he's feeling, and what his experiences are.
Yeah, he really is kind of an open book. I mean, famously in 2012, he did announce that he's HIV positive while he was performing on stage with Hercules in Love Affair.
Right. He has never been afraid of talking about the painful things in his life, whether that's the experience of coming into his own sexuality and the difficulties inherent in that, whether it's his drug addiction or, after he got sober, his sex addiction. This is a guy who puts it all out there. I'm expecting to hear a lot more about that in his upcoming memoir. In 2017, John signed with Little Brown, so that should be coming soon.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. In the meantime, we've always got his amazing records. Let's check out the title track from Love is Magic.
Love is magic, whether you like it or not. It isn't so tragic, it's just a lie that you bought. When the door opens up for you, don't resist, just walk on through.
Annie, I just adored that record. And you know who else did? Jake Shears.
Yeah, Jake's a big fan. Now, Jake is best known for his time with the New York pop rock legends Scissor Sisters. But after their hiatus in 2012, Shears actually started doing solo work and collaborating on songs with the likes of Erasure's Andy Bell, Calvin Harris, Kylie Minogue, and, get this, Elia, Cher.
Cher!
Can you believe it?
It's incredible.
Last year, he actually released his own memoir, Boys Keep Swinging, in which he discusses growing up gay, his years with Scissor Sisters, and his relationship with New York. And if that's not enough, in August of last year, he also released his first self-titled solo album.
And he starred in a lead role in Kinky Boots on Broadway.
He really does it all.
He does it all. I've got to say, I got to see Kinky Boots when it first opened. It's a fantastic show, and I can only imagine how well Jake inhabited that role.
Oh, I'm sure he's incredible. Let's check out the track Creep City from his self-titled album.
Get me out of this creep city. I'm flat broke and I don't need pity right now. Just get me out, 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 out. All the dogs in the back been smothered, and these cats don't make good lovers. This town's all cursed. Ground, 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 ground. Just not clear. Just have a look at them ears.
Annie, I've always thought Jake was the bee's knees.
The man can write a pop song.
He really, really can, and what a voice.
And as it turns out, John Grant is actually a huge fan of Jake's as well. So it was really great to get to hear them talk art and life and everything else.
It really was. And the guys get into a lot here. One theme that really came out is the toll that touring takes on their private lives. We hear about how each lost very important relationships because of it.
We hear about the frank honesty in Grant's songwriting as, quote, a reaction to not having been able to be who I was when I was younger.
And how a collaboration with Beth Orton brought him back from the brink of throwing in the towel on the music business.
Thank God he didn't.
Jake tells us about the amazing analogy Anoni shared with him about her songwriting process.
We hear about how both have faced and overcome their worst performing nightmares.
Oof. And porn. The guys talk about porn.
And on a related note, how the world of possibilities offered by the internet can also spell death for creativity.
Should we roll it?
Let's do it.
I can hear something. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you. I can see you. It's good to see you. It's nice to meet you again.
Yeah, you too. Congratulations on your record. It sounds beautiful.
Thanks, and likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise. I've always kind of wanted to, talk to you and hang out with you since the first time we met, which was almost 10 years ago.
I know. I just thought about that today, and I thought, hey, wait a minute. That's amazing.
I remember we were on Jules Holland together.
Yeah.
It must have been 8 or 9 years ago. I'd never heard your music, and I had no idea who you were. And then you sang Mars with a piano player, and it blew my mind. It really, I feel like I hadn't heard anything that beautiful in such a long time.
Wow.
And
thank you.
And I remember when it finished, I was so blown away. And then Jules asked you if you would play it again because they needed to tape it one more time.
Yeah.
And I remember getting to listen to it there for a second time. And I thought it was such an incredible song. And that's how I was introduced to your music. And have been a massive fan. I'm actually kind of nervous talking to you right now. I don't know why.
Well, I'm a little nervous too because, I came across your music when you guys were hitting it big as Scissor Sisters. And so I knew you from Denver when I was still living in Denver before I even went back. Because when did you do your first Scissor Sisters record?
Those first songs started coming out in like 2003 or so. And then the album was 2004. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. It really doesn't.
Because your band ended in 2004, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
right, 2004, 2005. And then I was sort of on my own. I was sort of trying to do the band thing by myself. And then it was really horrible being on I remember like the low point for me was being at like this Hungarian rock festival out in the middle of nowhere with just one other guy and me playing as the Czars. And I remember watching this stage mom force her little boy to go on to the stage while this Hungarian rock band was playing and like juggle next to the lead singer. Like, this is your chance. Get up there. Juggle. You've got to get up there and juggle. And so this little boy is dressed in a clown outfit. I'm out in the middle of nowhere outside of Budapest and just thinking, what the fuck happened to me? And this poor little boy is up there juggling and the lead singer's looking over at him like, okay, yeah.
Was that the moment that you were like, okay, I'm actually the band name is no longer?
Yeah. I couldn't handle it anymore. There was another one too.
Those weird festivals can do it to you.
Oh my God. Well, festivals in general, right? I mean, the festival vibe, obviously there are places where cool things that otherwise would never happen. Like I remember one year I was at the Latitude Festival and I thought I'd had what was the worst show of my career, just having all sorts of problems with monitors, and I came off the stage thinking, there's no fucking way I'm ever going to sing again, I'm never going to play again, I'm never going to sing again, I can't handle it anymore, And then I had this weird thing with Beth Orton in the forest. I was to go off, and she and I were to teach each other one of our songs. So she taught me one of her songs, and then I taught her one of my songs. And so they can be these incredible places, right, where things happen that otherwise would never happen. But I also find it quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
The festival scene.
Well, they can be your worst nightmare too. They can be so amazing when everything goes right, but like there's so much opportunity for failure at a festival, which is nerve-wracking. But that's also kind of the fun of showbiz. I've sort of gotten to like it when things go wrong at shows.
Yes.
And when stuff goes sideways, it's sort of this fun game where where you have to be like, how much bad stuff can happen on stage, and how long can you go on without letting the audience know
Absolutely.
that you know something is going on? Does that make any sense?
I mean, also there are opportunities there, because even when you acknowledge them, people remember those things from shows. And if you just put a positive spin on it, or you just go with the flow, then people actually, those seem to be some of the best shows,
Yeah. I was in Philadelphia a few weeks ago and we were playing this. It was kind of the Fillmore Philly. So it's one of those compound places. So there's like a big theater next door. And then I was kind of playing in the bar area. There's like this little bar club. And I went out on stage and I used in-ear monitors and started playing. And there was just completely different music coming through my... my ears, like totally different music. And I went on for like 3 songs, and it was wild. And I thought that maybe someone, like, I had a Spotify playlist somewhere that was on that never got turned off, and it turned out it was this. I was getting the feed from the string cheese incident next door.
Holy shit!
And I had to stop the show and be like, I really have to apologize, but I've got to stop for a second because
wow.
But it's fun when stuff like that happens, I think. But it's also fun to, like, trying to see, like, how long you can sort of fake it and still put on a good face. I did Broadway last winter, and it sort of gave me a newfound love of sort of accidents and things going weird on stage.
Wow, tell me about that. What was that like? Was that your first time doing that?
Yeah, and it was like super intense, but like it's actually really exciting when something goes wrong because you have to work so quick on your feet to make it right and to get through it. Either if somebody's going up on their lines or, but it makes the show exciting.
What was it that you were doing?
I played Charlie Price in Kinky Boots on Broadway for 3 months last winter.
Oh, wow.
And it was really, really fun. It was at this time a year ago, I was just going into rehearsals.
Okay.
Have you ever done theater?
I did in high school, and I really actually sort of wanted to go into acting, and my teacher, was telling me, I would encourage you to go into acting if you wanted to. And my parents were like, no son of ours is going to be in that sinful profession.
Yeah. What was the kind of plays that you were doing in high school?
Well, it's funny. We did something that was really, I was surprised that we got away with this, but we did something called Shadowbox. There was this play called Shadowbox, and I played one half of a gay couple, and one of the guys was dying of cancer. And I had to say the word fuck several times on stage. My mother came up to me after the show, and she was just looking at me like,
She was,
how dare you, But I mean, think about it. It's 1986 or 1985. Half of a gay couple, one of us has got dying of cancer. I'm saying fuck all over the place.
How did that happen?
I do not know how we got away with that. Out in the middle of nowhere in Parker, Colorado.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah, I still can't believe we did that.
I mean, I feel like, stuff like that maybe used to happen more back in those days, or maybe it happens less now. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a strange thing going on where there's this, like they say Seinfeld couldn't be done today, And you're thinking, wow, but like every channel is just a hardcore porn channel. How is it possible that Seinfeld wouldn't work today, But there is this weird thing going on where some of the things that they got away with back then, you can't do today because everything is, I don't know, what is it? Is it political correctness, or is it, there was a sample that I wanted to use on the new record at the end of the song Smug Cunt. There's this beautiful, beautiful sample from, have you ever seen the movie The Goddess from 1953 with Kim Stanley?
I have not.
You got to see that movie. A woman decides she's going to go to Hollywood and become an actress, and it's like a horror story of what can happen to
amazing
an actress in Hollywood.
What was the sample?
Well, the sample was her sitting in a car, and she's just had this little outburst, and she says to the guy, boy, I've got a temper, don't I? I'll have to apologize to you for that outburst. I feel these things very deeply. And so I thought that was the perfect ending to Smug Cunt, because just sort of take the piss out of the rough lyrics of the song. Anyway, I got in touch with Sony, and they wanted $6,000 for the sample. And then they said, when they saw the title of the song, they were like, well, we can't have our company, tied with anything vulgar like this. We feel like this debases our product. And I just thought to myself, yeah, because you're in the movie industry and it's so wholesome. Who the fuck do you think you're kidding?
Yeah.
It is strange. It's like every channel is becoming more of a hardcore porn channel, and yet you can't say poop. You know, it's like this weird dichotomy that's going on.
I just completely just brain farted. See, I get nervous.
That's okay.
I get nervous like this. I was on the BBC
not at
last
all.
week and I had basically a stroke live on the air.
You did?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I completely just like went up on a political show on the BBC.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just panicked on TV and it was really frightening. But
Well, I'm right there with you. So
I know what I was going to talk about. This was my train of thought.
Yeah.
This is where we were.
Okay.
Do you find, because you're very honest and forthcoming about your life and your experiences and also in your music, does that soothe you or does it terrify you?
I find it soothing. Because I feel like everybody thinks they're so fucking mysterious, you know? It's like, oh, believe me, you're not that mysterious. You know, all the things that you're not saying, you're giving away a lot. And I just feel like, I think it's a reaction to not having been able to be who I was when I was younger. You know, I had to make myself palatable to those around me. And, you know, I had to change. If I wanted to get into God's kingdom, then I couldn't be gay. And I couldn't be gay out in regular society because that was just a fucking perversion. And so I couldn't be myself in any scenario, and that made me sick. It made me depressed, and it made me into an alcoholic and a drug addict and a sex addict and whatever else I could get my hands on. You know, I can't seem to have a decent relationship with anything, and I think it's as a result of not being able to face myself and deal with who I really was. You know, that in my own music, I've had this reaction of like, I'm just going to tell it like it is, and I'm just going to say what I'm thinking. Because for me, escape is death. You know, escapism leads to depression, it leads to substance abuse, it leads to all sorts of destructive behavior, which even after I got sober from, you know, alcohol and cocaine, I was still indulging in all sorts of destructive sexual behavior, which led to the HIV diagnosis. And so I just sort of realized, you know, you've got to stop, you know, you've got to stop this. You've got to face whatever it is that you think you're running from, because there's probably not even anything there anymore. So that's why I think, for me, I feel like it's very comforting in the music. And, you know, it's funny because, as you can imagine, you know, people are constantly asking me, don't you feel like it's sort of uncomfortable or sort of cringe-worthy what you're doing? And I think to myself, no. I just think immediately, no, it doesn't feel that way at all. Because let's face it, this is everyday reality for everybody. I feel like everything's appropriate all the time, pretty much in every context, because that's what everyday life is like. So it feels soothing to me.
Yeah. I read that there was a possible memoir that you were starting to write. Have you been writing?
No, I haven't been writing at all yet. I've just been sort of procrastinating because I was working on this record and I just wanted to sit with the sounds. You know, I wanted to be in Cornwall in this beautiful setting with all these analog synths, with all these beautiful modular synths, just digesting the sounds and letting them, you know, just making up all these sonic canvases to project lyrics onto later. But I wanted to sit with them. You know how chili and cheesecake are often much better the next day when you let them sit a day or two. You know, I wanted to make sure that when it came to layering the sounds, that I was letting each layer sort of be saturated slowly by the next layer and just doing it slowly. I did the last record in 4 weeks and I really felt constipated, you know, by that experience, you know.
One time Anoni told me, and I'll never forget this, we were talking, this is 15 years ago, but she compared songwriting and the way that she writes songs to laying an egg. And that she was saying it doesn't happen very often, that it just kind of like gestates inside, and then, you know, every once in a while an egg pops out. What is your view of how songs come through?
Well, I sort of feel like it's. I watched this great piece on creativity from John Cleese on the internet. It's really incredible. It's about sort of the open stance and the off stance. For me, as far as songwriting, I feel like it's just a decision to be open to the possibilities. Like you're putting yourself into the open mode. Whereas it's like, no, today I don't feel like writing music. I'm not writing music. I'm not open to the possibilities. It's sort of like this thing is constantly flowing. And you just sort of have to open yourself up to it as like, am I going to notice things today? Or am I going to allow things to affect me today? Am I going to actually take them in and let them penetrate to the next level? Or am I just going to sort of have a closed stance where I'm just letting things pass me by? So I feel like songs can be written pretty much any time. It's just a matter of just making the decision to be open to the possibilities. But yeah, I can get stuck sometimes in like.
Do you have to be
patterns.
happy? Do you have to be happy to write songs? Do you have to be like content in a certain way?
No, I can be miserable. I find it harder to write songs when I'm happy, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. I find it, it's hard to say because, people ask us these questions constantly, right? Like, what's your creative process? And you think to yourself, well, it depends on what day you ask me.
Yeah.
Am I in a good place or am I in a bad place? And I guess I don't really see anything as being in a bad place, because all the negative shit is just as valid as the positive space. So I suppose that I feel like, even if I'm going through a space where I'm struggling to get out of the deep hole of depression because I have underestimated the Icelandic winter yet again, then that's still, for me, I still can describe myself as very happy in that situation because I'm at least awake for the experience.
Yeah. I ended up in this scenario a few years, like I moved to LA probably about 6 years ago and
okay.
Spent
I thought you were in New Orleans for some reason.
I split my time. I moved to New Orleans 3 years ago, so I split my time now between LA and New Orleans.
Okay.
But I was writing, and I just wasn't connecting with anything I was writing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was writing all the time, and nothing was gelling, and I didn't like any of the songs. And for me, what I realized was that the real estate in my brain was taken up by a relationship that had gone bad. My marriage basically had just gone south, and I was so preoccupied with it. I was so just constantly just sort of wallowing in that misery that I was having a really hard time connecting to anything I was making. I would find myself making music and just not even wanting to be there really. And the minute that I decided, the minute that I made the decision to turn around and get out of it and to make some moves, was immediately when I started writing good songs again and stuff that I liked. And it was a real kind of lesson in how I operate. I think if I'm preoccupied or if I'm worried or if the world is weighing on me too heavily, I have a hard time writing.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I'm not even sure if I know the answer to that. I mean, I will tell you this, that when I'm out walking, I seem to get a lot of ideas. I think when you've got those endorphins going from getting exercise and moving, where I feel very positive about the world, and then ideas do flow very freely.
Just getting away from the phone for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I just think our phones are kind of daydream killers.
Yeah.
And there is this constant harassment that we have all day long. It's like, I don't know, I don't have a kid, but it's just like a constant tugging on your pants, and it takes you, it takes you out of it. I've got this jacaranda tree in my yard that I sometimes I'll just leave the phone up here and just go down and sit and look at the tree for 15 minutes and get your brain starts to fill in the gaps. But I feel like phones, to me, my phone is my worst enemy as far as creativity, and it's something that I try to be super conscious of. Do you find that at all? I wouldn't say my phone, I'd say it's my computer, but I think it's the same thing. I like the phone for the fact that, whenever words and ideas come into my head, that I can just jot them down on that little notepad in the phone. Or voice memos,
I do
definitely.
love that. Exactly, voicemails. What I usually am doing with my phone is playing Boggle on it, because I can't afford to allow my sister to beat my ass in Boggle the way she did a couple of years ago. It was so humiliating that I've been playing Boggle obsessively ever since that beatdown that took place at my sister's house. But you know what? I turn my sound off on my phone. I do ignore it a lot. And I think it might come from something. I was bitching at my sister, speaking of my sister one day, about the fact that I couldn't get in touch with her. And she said, it's interesting because I feel like my phone is for my convenience, not yours. And so
I like that viewpoint.
Yeah,
I like it.
do
It's
too.
a good way to think about it.
She's hilarious. But I do find the computer thing, I lose sleep because of my computer.
You do. It keeps you up at night.
Yeah, because I just want to watch everything. I want to watch everything that I can get my hands on. I want to watch this show, and I want to watch that show, and then I want to watch, weird videos on YouTube. Or, I'm a language freak. So being able to have all these different keyboards, like the Russian keyboard on your phone, and, the Spanish keyboard and the German keyboard, and the fact that you can watch the news in all these languages on YouTube, and you can watch their shows on YouTube in those different languages. it's opened up this world of possibilities. It's amazing, but it is death to relationships, and I feel like it can really be death to creativity because it just takes up too much space, doesn't it?
I agree. And what's your relationship with porn, speaking of being on a computer all night long?
I don't watch it very often.
No.
No, but I've gone through periods in my life where I watched a lot of it and, wanted to whack off a couple of times a day. And, I mentioned the sex addiction thing. So I was quite heavily into, watching a lot of porn. And when I drop into a hole, it'd be like, you're like wounding yourself at the end of a good day, really getting into the porn. But I started sort of dealing with that as well a couple of years ago. And I don't watch it very often anymore. But I still go back sometimes.
I mean, it really can, I do think it affects relationships, and I'm single at the moment, and it's like, I don't know, it can sort of make you lazy, and it makes me lazy in a way sometimes.
Yeah. I think it can be a real intimacy killer.
Yeah.
Because I find that like lying next to somebody and actually being naked with them and not doing anything and just sort of being with somebody, like being naked with them and sort of taking them in and actually being present in the moment, in the foreplay, and in the process of actually having sex with somebody, you can't believe how hard it was for me to get back. In fact, I still struggle with it, and I feel like that all comes from the fact that I was using porn, just to make it easy on myself. You don't have to be intimate with somebody. You can get exactly what you want anytime you want. You don't have to interact with somebody. You don't have to, think about what it feels like when somebody's touching your skin and actually be present with them in the moment. And, where the goal is not just to have an orgasm, but to actually be with somebody and enjoy them and to give them pleasure as well. So I find that the more I get away from porn, the easier it is for me to enter into that type of intimacy with somebody, which for me it's what I want, I'm not in a relationship either, but I feel like it can be a real intimacy killer. And I feel like it's stolen a lot from me just because I was letting it fill up all this space,
I mean, would you even classify I feel like when we get on Instagram sometimes, I really do my best to I've gotten very conscious about just a scroll of just super hot guys and skin and I feel like that to me is also really affects me and
absolutely
and speaks to my insecurities and I kind of think back on the impact that's had on me and what I've done to my own body in the last 10 years and sort of what that's taken from me. I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think Instagram kind of that parade, to me, it almost counts for porn too.
Oh yeah. Every bit of it counts. I mean, I can use Facebook that way too. I can use the JCPenney catalog that way as well. It doesn't really, I can use whatever is available to me,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this thing about, getting into thinking about intimacy and all that stuff, I think it's important. I think it's good. These questions are very, very good.
How do we date people?
I don't know. I mean, I've never dated.
But you've gotten into, I think you and I are probably both in a very similar boat where it's tough to forge relationships at certain times because I'm sure you are probably as all over the place as I am. I mean, I am just not in one place for 2 weeks at a time.
Well, that's the thing. That's another huge thing. I think this last relationship that I just got out of, and I didn't want it to end. I thought it was going to be forever. Basically, what happened was I think that my career and the schedules that I was subjecting myself to by choice were making it impossible for me to have a healthy relationship with this person. I mean, when we were together, it was good, but the downtime that I would need when I came home from being out, because I don't know if you're like me, but when I come home from being out on tour for a long time, I don't want to be talked to and I don't want to be touched. And that's not fair to them because they've been waiting around for you. They've been without you for all this time. So it made it very difficult for me. And I really feel like in the end, it sort of cost me that relationship, this career that I choose to do.
I mean, I think it cost me mine in a certain way. I mean, I was with somebody for 11 years and I think, I definitely think overall it's kind of it's
a long time.
The downfall of it.
Yeah. And actually, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I've been thinking about, you can always comfort yourself by, the effect that you see that your music is having out there. When people come up to you and tell you what your music means to them, I'm sure you get letters all the time where people are telling you that it's an incredible thing for them to have your music and what it means to them. And I think that's really great. And we can use that to some extent to encourage ourselves. On the other hand, I think a lot of times I also need to say, but what price am I paying?
Yeah.
What is it taking away from me? Because I want to have a private life too.
Yeah.
I don't want to just come home from tour and lie in bed for 4 days or 5 days and then go to the airport again.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there. There's nobody there because you're not available to them whether you're there or not there.
Yeah. I think it's a common thing to face depression when you're done. There's this kind of discouragement that you feel a lot of times when you get off the road, and it is those moments with people when they tell you how much you mean to them, how much your music means to them. It's kind of like when I feel like throwing in the towel, which is all the time. I think about those moments, and I think about. But yeah, I mean, do you ever just want to just quit? Because I find myself like, I don't know, pretty often just being like, God, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I'm not sure to what extent I can be honest with myself about, the answer to that question. I mean, when I was younger, I'm sure that I wanted to be acknowledged. I think I wanted to have fame and I wanted to have money. When I was, when I started out in my band a long time ago, when I got sober, I moved to New York and I thought, this music thing isn't working out. And I was waiting tables again and I was starting to work as an interpreter at the hospital and going into the language thing. And I mean, if you stay in this profession, your false motives will be burnt out of you. If you continue to stick around, because you can't keep showing up with the wrong motives because it kills you.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I do this just because, I do love writing songs. I love recording. I love making an album.
And you're great at it too. And that's a big factor.
Thank you. And I love doing it. And I love getting up on stage and, just getting to perform and play a concert for people. And it's this great blend of losing your mind and then having complete control at the same time.
Yeah.
I love the feeling of performing. And what goes on when you go out on stage? What goes through your head? What are you looking at in an audience? What happens on your first song? Then what are you doing on your second song? What's your kind of philosophy when you're starting a show? Tell me about what you go through as you play a show and the feeling. What goes on in your head?
Well, as you know, it can be many different things. I mean, there's those nights where I become really distracted and I have a really hard time concentrating on the songs because of the thoughts that are going through my head during the songs.
Yes.
And those are very difficult performances because you have to compensate to such an extent to keep doing what you're doing while your brain is split in half and you're thinking about this other thing. Those are really exhausting. But then that doesn't happen very often. And most of the time, I'm just doing my best to inhabit the songs and connect with the audience. And a lot of times I find myself fighting with all these voices that are saying, oh, you should say something now, or now it's time for you to say something witty, or you should be saying this, or you need to do this and you need to do that. And I try and ignore that voice as much as possible and simply just be there with the people and look at them, look into their eyes. But, a lot of times when I'm playing songs, I try and look at the audience because I want to show, I'm here with you in this moment and I see you. And
I think that's it. I think it's imperative. It's so important. Yes. What were you going to say though?
Well, I was going to say that a lot of times I forget the words and forget what chord I was playing when I do that, when I look out, because I'll, inevitably I'll see some good looking guy out in the audience.
Oh my God.
He'll catch my eye and I'll forget my lyrics and then I'll play the wrong chord. And then a lot of times I forget my favorite worst thing that happens to me on stage that I find so humiliating is that when I get so into the song that I forget about the microphone and I hit my head on it while I'm playing at the piano. So embarrassing.
I gave myself a fat lip a couple weeks ago. I think I stepped on a mic stand and it just whacked me right in the...
Like the old stepping on the rake in the cartoons and Looney Tunes. Yeah, that's a classic favorite.
Whacked me in the face. But no, I do the same thing when I'm... Sometimes, you just end up focusing on that. You could have 999 people standing there just soaking it all up and just loving you. And then you can spot the one girl on her cell phone.
Exactly.
Texting somebody.
Totally.
It's just like...
Or, I always seem to look out at some guy who's standing there yawning and looking at his watch,
Why is it that so many people that come up to the very front, that they get there first, to be right at the front of the show, why are they always the most bored looking people? I don't want to say always, but there's so many, a lot of them look really bored.
And tortured, yes.
Tortured.
And just like, you know what I try and do in those moments? I just think, I look at my band and I concentrate on my band, and a lot of times I'll look over at Budgie and think, why is the drummer from Susie and the Banshees on this fucking stage with me? And I'll just get off on that, because watching him play is enough to sort of get me back into the groove when I'm, looking out at the yawners or whatever.
For years, like after I'd found kind of success in music and all that anxiety that creeps in after that, and all that depression and the bad dreams, and I'm sure you have, these are pretty common dreams, but those nights that you dream that you're playing a show and people are just kind of like, are just leaving in droves, and you're like,
it's like, hey, there weren't even that many people here. How can they still be leaving?
And there's just you'd look up and there's just a couple people there. You come out and there's nobody there. And about a year and a half ago, when I was first playing this new album, I was going through the South. We played in Nashville and New Orleans and Birmingham, Alabama, and
oh, cool.
And we were going out on stage, and one of my best friends, Tex, was with me. And he pulled me aside before we were going out, and he was like, "Sister, I got to talk to you for a second." And I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, he just starts laughing, and he's like, "There's nobody out there." And I was like, "Nobody?" He's like, maybe like 8 or 9 people.
Really?
Yeah. And that was always my worst fear. That was my worst nightmare. And it felt so good to laugh about it, and it felt so good. It was one of my favorite shows I've ever gotten to play.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it just like that doesn't scare me anymore.
Yeah, that's such an amazing experience to have. I had that at Glastonbury 2 years ago, where I totally lost my voice after the 4th song, and there's 10,000 people, 15,000 people standing there, and my backup singers and the audience just took over for me and did the lyrics for me. And it was, it's my worst nightmare, and it happened. And, people were saying, great show. And I was like, what? Or were you at the same, show I was at?
It is really frightening, actually, when you really can't sing and have to go out. It's a scary moment. I've really tried to done my best to just kind of laugh it off.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you should do, because, I mean, who gives a shit, when I feel like I've really fucked up a song on stage.
Yeah.
And that certainly happens from time to time. And
I hate that feeling.
Yeah. And somebody told me once, they were like, every beginning of every new song is a new opportunity. So if I feel like I've lost the audience, I just start from zero again at the next song. And I'd say 99% of the time, I'm able to just quickly come out of that and reconnect. Yeah. It's like you're saying, a lot of these things that have always been our worst fears, it's always smoke and mirrors, Even if somebody gets up on stage and shoots me in the head, at least it'll be over, for fuck's sakes. I just think there's really nothing, what can they do? There's just nothing,
Yeah. It's a funny little life we've got, isn't it? Isn't it? Aren't we fortunate?
It's strange, yeah.
And I think I've always looked at you as somebody, I just feel a lot of commonality with you in certain ways, and just also in the musical styles that we like. I feel like there's a lot of common ground, and it's just been a pleasure to talk to you, just because
you too.
I've always been such a big fan, and
well, thank you.
I had about a month ago, a really good friend of mine passed away, and I had just.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I just basically went through a bottle of tequila by myself and was just listening to Dolly Parton spirituals and weeping all day long. And finally, at around maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, I sort of came out of it and realized that your new record was out. And I put it on, and it was just it made me so happy listening to it. And I listened to the whole thing from top to bottom. And I was just laughing, and it really brought me a lot of joy in that moment. It was a real pleasure, and that's when I sent you a tweet that night that I was just like, this record is amazing. It's so funny. It really is funny, and
thank you.
Yeah, and your music really makes me happy. So thank you for that.
No, thank you so much, Jake. That's amazing to hear. Well, I just started getting into your new record. I just bought it not too long ago, and it sounds like you're in your peak top form.
Thanks.
It's really amazing.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm real proud of it. It was a real kind of labor of love, and I'm excited to, I just want to keep going, I just want to keep hoofing it. And I think my dream is to make the music I want to make how I want to make it.
Well, it sounds like you're doing that. I mean, the record it's really uplifting. You've got 12 songs on there and it doesn't sound like it doesn't let up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's really beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And
I'd really love to hang out in LA.
I would love that too.
Out there.
I'll be at your show and I'll come give you a big hug and and it would be awesome to I would love to hang out.
Okay. This has been really uplifting for me, Jake. Really, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And have a great kickoff of your tour. And
thank you.
I'll be seeing you here in Los Angeles.
All right. Cool.
Mwah.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Mwah. Bye.
John Grant, Jake Shears, thank you so much for joining us here on the Talkhouse Podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you check out Jake's writing for the site, including pieces on LaRue and ministry.
Jake Shears was recorded at his home in LA by Ali Nikou, and John Grant was recorded by our co-producer Mark Yoshizumi at Hook and Fade Studios in Brooklyn. The Talkhouse Podcast theme song was composed and performed by The Range.
You can also check out new episodes of the Talkhouse Podcast and some of our past favorites on Spotify.
While you're there, follow the Talkhouse. That way you'll make sure to catch all the future episodes.
You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
At Talkhouse. Till next week, I'm Elia Einhorn.
I'm Annie Fowl.
Peace.
Bye.